Embrace awkwardness. Not every boundary will be graceful, and that's okay. Awkwardness is often the price of growth and also just comes with new behavior. I know that in a previous episode, I listed out feelings that we need to be able to manage in order to set boundaries in our life, and awkwardness was one of them. If you have been over disclosing for a long time with someone and you show up and you say less, or they go, "What's going on with your boyfriend and you? Are you guys staying together?" And normally you would have just barfed out all the information. It is kind of awkward when you're like, "Yeah, you know what? I'm figuring it out." And that's it. Or it can be awkward to say, "Hey, I don't actually feel comfortable talking about that. I'd love to change subjects." Or to say no when you historically said yes to everything. Welcome to Grow with Robin Breckenridge, a podcast about stepping into the most fully expressed, aligned, and conscious version of yourself. Here, we dive into the real work of personal growth, establishing boundaries, understanding your patterns, building self-trust, healing emotional wounds, and creating relationships that feel safe, authentic, and fulfilling. I'm Robin, a life and relationship coach, and in each episode, we'll explore the tools, insights, and conversations that will help you not just improve your life and relationships, but truly transform them. You don't have to just go through it. Let's grow through it, and let's do it together. Okay, so before we even get into today's episode, I have to confess something. I already recorded this entire episode, poured my heart into it, actually got off and went, "Wow, killed that episode. That was really good." And then I realized I never pulled my mic over to my face. So this is the same computer and setup that I see clients, and I don't use this microphone for various reasons when I'm working with clients, so I will move it over to the side. Well, I never moved it back when I recorded the episode. So the whole thing sounded like I was underwater recording a podcast episode from like a submarine. ADHD strikes yet again. And let's be honest, boundaries are hard enough to navigate without me sounding like I'm broadcasting this episode from Atlantis. So here we are. Take 2. Mic is pulled up to my face. Same clear message. So let's get into it for real this time, and in a way that you can clearly hear me. So for those of you that are listening in real time, this would be the reason my episode did not drop on Wednesday when it normally does, and it will be dropping one day later. So yet another initiation into the podcast life, and hopefully one that I learn from and that I continue to pull this mic over because you cannot hear me without it. So hi, and welcome back to Grow with Robin Breckenridge. If you're anything like me or the people that I work with, you know this feeling. You've done the journaling, you've listened to the episodes, you've started to understand your boundaries on paper and in your head, and then real life hits. Maybe it's a family gathering. Maybe it's a message from someone who drains you. A moment where your energy gets hijacked and you're right back in the pattern you swore you'd outgrown. I've been there way more times than I would like to admit. And that's why today's episode matters. Because we're not just talking about boundaries, which I know we've been talking about here for a while. We're talking about how to actually live them in real time, especially when you're tired, anxious, or caught off guard. So today I'm going to give you some practical tools that I call boundary hacks, little micro tools that you can use in the moment. And then we'll walk through how to create your own personalized boundary roadmap. Now, the reason that I teach it this way is because I found it to be extremely unfair that I teach people these things about boundaries and then go, "Okay, now go put them into practice in your life." It's just not that easy. Like, we need a structure to be able to step into, especially like I mean, for some of us, maybe we've been interacting with someone like this for a decade or 3 decades, multiple decades. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm not going to disclose those things. And I know they're in a different place in the boundary categories and I need to show up differently. We need a structure. So that's what I'm here to teach you today. First, I'm going to teach you some hacks that you can use in the moment. You can use when you're stressed, when you're caught off guard. You can have them in your back pocket. And then we're going to shift into like, how do you create a roadmap? Because I'm sure you're listening to this podcast and some of you might be saying, okay, yeah, now I know who the boundary pusher is. I know that I need to have boundaries. I know where they are in the boundary pyramid, but how in the hell do I show up differently? So that's what today's episode is about. And after this episode, I'm not going to leave you scrambling when something happens or you are being called to assert a boundary. You're going to be grounded. You're going to be prepared. So let's get into it. So remember, the boundaries aren't just about what we say. They're about how we show up in the moment. Because it's one thing to understand boundaries on a calm Tuesday morning when you're not activated. It's another thing to hold a boundary when you're emotionally activated, surprised, or put on the spot. And that's why I created these hacks. They're bite-sized tools that don't require a big confrontation or a perfectly worded script. They are nervous system friendly, and they give you a way to stay connected to yourself, even if the situation around you doesn't feel aligned and connected. So let's dive into some of these tools. The first tool, one of the silliest tools, and probably the one that my clients reflect back to me they use the most often. And I call this tool the invisible popcorn. And that name comes from a past mentor of mine. And I loved it because it's a very easy tool to remember. But what it really means is that you become the observer in a relationship. So you eat the invisible popcorn. And this is basically when you know someone in your life isn't going to change or having another talk won't make a difference. This is your power move. So this would be reserved for relationships that sometimes when I have clients bring these type of situations to me, I'll say, hey, like, you might as well go have that conversation with a brick wall. What it means is that we've identified that this person either doesn't have the emotional maturity, awareness, or infrastructure to actually listen to your boundary and shift their behavior. But either you choose to be in relationship with them or you have to be in relationship with them. Like sometimes we work with people and we don't have the choice to just say like, I want Sue from accounting out of here. She has no boundaries, right? But we have to be in relationship with them. And our job, and this is the job of this podcast, is to keep you as relational as possible. Remember, relational meaning that you have the ability to pause and consider how your behavior is impacting yourself and others. So in the work example, if we're just downright rude to Sue from accounting, or we don't like her or whatever, you still have to be professional or else that's going to impact you negatively. Okay. So it sounds something like this. Like we don't need to say anything when we're eating the invisible popcorn. This is that invitation to self. It's like watching a movie. But the external dialogue goes inward. So instead of being like, Sue, the response you just gave was so rude and condescending. We know that if we say that, it's just going to create more drama and chaos. She's not going to get it. It's going to go right over her head. So the invitation comes inward. And we go, all right, I'm just going to observe Sue and watch the show. So internal dialogue sounds like, oh, there she goes again. That was so condescending. Oh, yikes. Look at what she's doing now. We're just watching the movie and we become the observer rather than being reactionary. Because if we know someone doesn't have the awareness to change or be able to see clearly what you're mirroring back to them, then there's no point. So what you do, you sit back, you grab the invisible popcorn and you watch the show. And in this is exercising agency without fixing, rescuing, or trying to change someone that you're powerless to change. So this is a popular one with in-laws. It's a popular one with people that like maybe on a holiday get together with your family if you can't stand Uncle Bob. It's like you just eat the invisible popcorn, you become the observer, and you just get the heck out of there when it's time to go. And although it might still be frustrating to observe that person, for sure you will feel a whole lot better that you did not react to someone, that the reaction was never going to change anything, but just frustrate and activate you. So if I had $1 for every time a client sent me the popcorn emoji, I'd be rich. Rich, I tell you, because this is something that I still use to this day. I mean, there's certain people where I'm like, okay, the best thing for me to do is observe, get through this interaction, and keep moving. The second one is to bite your tongue. So you don't actually have to bite your tongue. You could also just place your tongue on the roof of your mouth. And this is to cue yourself as a reminder to stop over disclosing or explaining or proving to someone who hasn't earned that degree of truth. So this would be a great one for maybe that shared interest category. If you're like, wow, I historically over disclosed and then felt judged in interactions with them, or this person would pry information out in me. Or sometimes, and this is true for me, I learned a very valuable lesson becoming a coach, which is it is a big no-no in coaching to say things like you need to, or you should, right? Oh, the dreaded should word. So I learned very quickly that that's not a very supportive, relational, and healthy way to communicate with people. I actually don't know what you should do. And I don't know more than you do. That's me, bringing my opinion into this work. But I did notice that like out in my life, sometimes, especially after doing this work for a while, people pay me for my advice. I'm like, maybe my advice is pretty good and maybe I have something to say. But I'm aware that is not my role and it's not my responsibility. So often when I hear the words you need to come out of my mouth to anyone, be it in a session or out in the world, I always relanguage it. I will literally stop myself and say, hold on, let me rephrase that. Would you be willing to? Are you open to advice? I invite you to. But I had to shift that because I don't know, there was definitely a time in my life where I was giving unsolicited advice. I would tell people what they needed to do. And that is not my job. It's not my responsibility. And especially if someone is in the shared interests category, it's not my place to be giving people advice or telling them what they should do. And even to be quite honest, people who are in my trust category, kind of ad nauseum, I always try to ask like, hey, are you open to feedback? Are you looking for my opinion? Would you like my professional opinion about that? I always ask first because sometimes I might think I'm being helpful, but maybe that person just wants someone to listen. Maybe that person does want feedback or doesn't want feedback, but at least I asked for consent. So this one can be for the over disclosers that you typically would go somewhere and give too much information, and that tongue on the roof of your mouth is a reminder like, ooh, they're in shared interest. I don't want to over disclose. I don't want to give these details in my life. It could be that maybe there's someone in your life that you historically have a pattern of trying to change or giving unsolicited advice, and that's impacting the safety of the container or the connection. This is a great way to just pause, ground for a minute, say less over explaining, less unsolicited advice, less teaching, and silence in this can be your boundary. It often says more than words ever could. So I definitely can remember a time where I historically was an overdisclosure, realized that a lot of the times with this particular group of people, I would overdisclose and I would get in my car and kind of beat myself up. Like, why did I share that? Or why did I give so much? And the truth is I felt uncomfortable. And so I was filling in awkward silences or gaps or whatever with kind of throwing myself under the bus. And I walked out of that interaction and I got in my car and I remember being like, wow, like I said less, I bit my tongue. I didn't over disclose in the way that I would before. And it really felt like I had my own back. And I remember driving home being like really proud of myself. Like, wow, we didn't sell ourselves out. Like, this is possible. We can actually do this. So if you are an over discloser, if you are someone who has a hard time holding your opinion in, this is just a great little tool to remind you that you need to pause and consider whether your feedback is helpful, whether it's appropriate, whether you're carrying the right amount of responsibility. Like you don't have to fix, save, change, wake everybody up, or just as a reminder to like slow down and pause before you share information about yourself. So boundary hack 3 is about time limits. This is probably one of my favorite boundary hacks. So recognizing when your energy is drained is a signal, not a failure. You don't have to wait until you're completely depleted to exit a conversation or leave a gathering or a time that you're spending with someone. So this is a very important boundary hack because sometimes, and we're going to talk about roadmaps in a minute, where we talk about like what are safe things to do with this person, safe topics we can discuss. I mean, there are so many times in coaching, I have people come to me and say like, I tried to go out with my mom or with this person that has been a boundary pusher in my life. And like the first 30 minutes were great. And then past that, like she went right back into her old patterning and digging into my life. And I completely threw all my boundaries out the window and got really short. And that is a really great signal. Like the signals that your body gives you, they don't ever lie to you. So like when you're with someone and there's like a time where you start rolling your eyes, you start huffing and puffing, you start building some resentment, you've probably hit your threshold of capacity for the duration of time you're spending with that person. So whenever I teach boundaries, I think considering the duration of time you're spending with someone, where they are in the boundary categories and how safe you feel is an amazing tool to bring into your relationships. So it can sound something like this. Hey, I'm so happy to see you. I can stay for 30 minutes. Unfortunately, I have to go after that. Or I'll join you for dinner, but I won't be able to stay much longer than that. Setting time limits and considering the duration of time you're setting or spending with somebody protects your peace before resentment builds. And it reminds me of a story of a client that I had that had a very compromised relationship with a family member. And they were having a hard time like interacting. Like the conversations were very activating. They ended up kind of avoiding them at times. So we kind of went back to square one. And we were like, how much time do you spend talking to this person? Because this person lived out of state. So it was over the phone. Like, when do you start rolling your eyes? When do you start getting frustrated, annoyed? And we kind of figured that it was about 15 minutes in. And I said, well, I know this is radical, but what if you just kept the next interaction to 15 minutes? And of course, I like front loading things in communication because it's clear and that's kind. Like, so you could just say up front, like, hey, I just wanted to check in with you, but I only have 15 minutes. And I know that this person kind of felt like maybe a little bit guilty that like this was a beloved family member, but like only 15 minutes. But in lieu of that, we need to do things differently in this work. He gave it a shot. And they rebuilt their relationship from there. Like for a little while, those phone calls lasted 15 minutes. And then as that person got a little bit more comfortable and was kind of ironing out what was safe and not safe to talk about with this person, their relationship changed. Now, I still know this client, and this is years later. They don't spend 15 minutes talking to this family member. In fact, they've gone on vacations with this family member now. The family member has come out and visited and stayed. So I want you to keep in mind that when we're setting these limits around the people that we're setting boundaries with, they can change in the future, but we do have to start somewhere. So again, if you only have a couple things that you can talk to somebody without being activated, then you probably don't have more than like 15 minutes of conversation with that person. But it's great to start somewhere. So the next boundary hack is changing the subject. Redirecting a conversation can be a powerful, gentle boundary, especially when the topic feels unsafe, intrusive, or unnecessary. So it can sound something like, anyway, how did your event go this weekend? Or sometimes I bring humor in it, like, oh, I'm so sick of talking about that. Like, let's switch gears. What have you been up to lately? Tell me, like, what's been fun in your life? You're allowed to guide the tone of the conversation without feeling guilty. And this particular tool just reinforces that Boundaries don't have to be aggressive. They don't have to be like very conflict driven. It can simply be a shift. And that is your way energetically and behaviorally of saying, no, thank you. I don't want to go there without your words having to do that. Just know at any time, if you need to change the subject of a conversation, that's available to you. Boundary hack number 5, discernment. Like I'm telling you guys, every bit of what we're doing is building discernment. And discernment is one of the best tools you can take with you relationally in your life. So what does discernment mean again? Discernment means good judgment. It's honestly what the whole basis of the boundary pyramid is. You use your good judgment to determine what's truly safe and aligned for you. You don't owe full access to people just because someone asks or they're a family member or you have history with them. So discernment is really about getting curious with yourself. It might sound like, is this person emotionally safe to share this information with? Do I trust this space to hold what I'm about to give? Boundaries begin with what you choose to reveal and to whom. Boundary hack number 6, you can end the conversation. You don't need to earn an exit. Let me say that again. You do not need to earn an exit. When it's not productive or it feels violating to you, you get to leave. So remember that consequences are teachers in our life. There are natural consequences. If you are inappropriate, if you're violating, if you are showing up to someone and digging without boundaries, people don't want to continue conversations with you. And if nobody was codependent, then we would just allow consequences to hit people. And that consequence would say, oh yeah, that way of relating to people isn't working. It's pushing them away versus helping you connect. And of course we have free will, but like at some point we might go, oh, that's not working. I need to shift that. Like I really like this person. I don't want to push them away. So it is okay to tell the truth in your relationships. It might sound something like this. I don't really feel comfortable talking about this, so I'm not going to continue this conversation right now. It might sound like I'm feeling overwhelmed and I need to take a little space. I want to take a pause from this particular topic. And just like in the previous episode, I discussed the rule of 3 when we are setting boundaries. So if you've already repeated your boundary and someone keeps pushing it, it's okay to say, hey, you know what? I've already asked you a couple times. I've let you know that I don't feel comfortable with this and I don't want to talk about it. So I am going to end the conversation or I'm going to leave. This is not rude. This is self-respect. Boundary hack number 7, you can always ask for more time. If you tend to say yes too quickly or feel frozen under pressure, this tool gives you space to return to alignment. It's also one of my personal favorites. It can sound something like, I need time to think about that and I'll circle back with you tomorrow. Hey, I want to have some time to think about this and get back to you later today. I always love this one, so you guys are welcome to take it. Like I really want to honor what you just shared by giving it some time and space to process. So let me get back to you. And believe it or not, this is one we also can use at work, which I know can be hard sometimes depending on where you work, but it is absolutely okay to say, hey, I really want to honor what you just mentioned by kind of checking in with the project I'm currently on so that I don't take on too much because I want to make sure that I'm showing up fully to the project that I'm currently on. So know that like in those moments that feel urgent, we do not have to know what to do or what to say. And it reminds me of a time in my own life when I had a falling out in a family relationship and I hadn't talked to this person in a long time. And the person reached out to me and wanted to have a conversation. And I felt so stressed out and so overwhelmed that like by the end of this conversation, I needed to know like which direction we were taking the relationship. And I didn't know which direction I wanted to take. There was like a lot of hurt. There was a lot of water under the bridge. So I got a really great piece of advice from someone. And they said, what if you just listened? And then at the end of the conversation, you said, hey, I want to take some time to think about everything you shared. Like, thank you for sharing it. And then take some time and decide what you want to do with the information that was shared. I mean, genius. Like in my activation, I didn't even think about that. So know that it is okay. Like I had just assumed that like I needed to know what to do by the end of the conversation. And I didn't even know what this person was about to bring me. I didn't know if they were going to be accountable. I didn't know if it was going to feel like it was repaired fully. So I love that option because for those of us that respond reactively to urgency, which that's definitely something that was true for me and I continue to work on to this day, it's just kind to give us a little bit more time to process before we decide or agree to anything. Boundary hack number 8, embrace awkwardness. Not every boundary will be graceful, and that's okay. Awkwardness is often the price of growth and also just comes with new behavior. I know that in a previous episode, I listed out feelings that we need to be able to manage in order to set boundaries in our life, and awkwardness was one of them. If you have been over disclosing for a long time with someone and you show up and you say less, or they go, "What's going on with your boyfriend and you? Are you guys staying together?" And normally you would have just barfed out all the information. It is kind of awkward when you're like, "Yeah, you know what? I'm figuring it out." And that's it. Or it can be awkward to say, "Hey, I don't actually feel comfortable talking about that. I'd love to change subjects." Or to say no when you historically said yes to everything. For myself, awkwardness was very hard to manage. It was hard for me to manage when I felt awkward. It was hard for me to manage when I felt that other people felt awkward. And I would offer myself up for sacrifice. I mean, I would over disclose, I would perform, I would do whatever I could so no one felt uncomfortable. But uncomfortable just means something new is happening. So it can sound like, "Hey, I'm not comfortable with that." And then pausing and not saying anything more. Letting it be messy. Letting there be silence. You are not here to rescue other people from their discomfort. And let me tell you that awkwardness, to my knowledge, has never killed anybody. It's just something that if you can push through it and not abandon yourself in it, it's a part of setting boundaries. Like sometimes it just feels weird. Boundary hack number 9. What is the next kindest choice to you? When you feel frozen or overwhelmed, ask yourself, what would feel like the next kindest choice right now? If you took this as the umbrella of this work and everything that I've said in this podcast, please do. If that's the only thing you take. Imagine that you were in a relationship with someone that didn't care how you felt, didn't care about your needs, and would push you into things that weren't kind. Do you think you're going to have a healthy relationship with them? Do you think you're going to feel safe with them? Well, guess what? That person is you. And you are stuck in this body. You are stuck in this relationship. I don't think any of us would electively choose to be in a relationship with someone that wasn't kind to us. I know it happens. It's happened to me too, but I'm not telling you it came from a place of choosing. It came from a place of familiarity. So being nice to yourself is not going to hurt you. Considering what you need, considering what's the next kindest choice to you is never going to hurt you. That might sound like skipping the event, not replying immediately, saying, "Hey, I'm really sorry, but I need some rest today. I'm going to have to pass." Kindness to others is beautiful. Kindness to yourself is essential to having a healthy relationship with yourself. So please, when you are setting boundaries, this hack is really, really important. Just consider, what's the next kindest choice to me? Boundary hack number 10, do it differently. If your usual pattern is to overextend, shut down, or defer, try a new response and see what unfolds. Try. If I usually overaccommodate, today I'll offer less. If I usually overdisclose, I'll say yes. If I normally avoid something, as scary as it is, maybe I'll show up to it. Maybe I'll have that hard conversation. Maybe I'll send that text. Maybe I'll try to tell the truth. Maybe I'll try to ask for what I need. And this is how we build new relational muscles, one choice at a time. So again, when in doubt, not just in boundary setting, if you are looking to change something in your life, we have to do it differently. Boundary hack number 11, pause. Now, I know I've said this before on this podcast. Pausing is the best mental health intervention of all time. You cannot be in a trauma response and choose. When we're in a trauma response, we react. When we slow down and pause, we have the ability to access agency. Agency means choice. This is what all of this work is about. I'm giving you guys a lot of tools, but what needs to happen before the tool is a pause. So before you speak, decide if what you're about to say is yours or a fear response. Give yourself a breath between the trigger and the truth. If we have the ability to access a pause, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, sometimes we can't access a pause in the moment, but we can pause after the fact and get curious. Like, what happened there? Did I hold to my boundary? Did I keep this person in the category that I chose? It all requires a pause. So try placing your hand on your heart, taking a deep breath, and then responding from your center. We can't find our center if we're not in our body. When we pause, it allows us to get into our body. Remember, there's really good intelligence in your brain. There is also really good intelligence in your body. But if we are reacting, we're probably not in our body. So slowing down, integrating what we're thinking and feeling, and choosing one of these tools. Okay, normally I would over-disclose. This time I'm not. Okay, I'm aware this person is no longer in the trust category. I need to show up with different boundaries. So when in doubt, pause. When in doubt, slow down. And to go back to where I started in this episode, pausing when I recorded this episode and didn't pull the mic over would have been like a really, really great tool. And I wouldn't have had to re-record this whole entire episode. So that is something that is an invitation from the universe I keep getting. Slow down, pause. So pausing, amazing boundary hack. And the last boundary hack. I really can't teach boundaries without talking about social media. I mean, generally speaking, most of us are on it. It is a part of how we relate in society currently. So remember, you are allowed to curate your digital space in ways that feel safe and aligned. There was a time in my life where Instagram was not safe. It was a place where I compared myself to other people. It was a place where the content was activating and wasn't building self-esteem for me. I got off for 6 months. I came back on and I decided, just like I had done in my life, I was going to create a safe and aligned space on social media. So I followed only certain accounts. I unfollowed accounts that didn't feel good. And now my Instagram account is really this place of like learning, of emotional growth, of spiritual growth. And it's actually a really positive place. And I know I told this story before, but during COVID, there was a time when, I don't know, we were all stuck in our own houses and I was, teaching my son from home while not being able to leave my house, while the world abruptly shut down and changed and it was impacting my job and all the things. And yet I was seeing people on there, like just doing all the art projects and working from home and doing all the things. And I just kind of felt like, man, I'm not doing enough. And I muted some really, really nice people. Like no one did anything wrong and they're not muted still to this day. But I knew that if we're operating off the next kindest choice, my comparison was really up. This is no one else's fault because I was activated, because we were in a major time of transition. And so the next kindest choice for me was to eliminate, engaging in so many spaces where I was comparing myself for a period of time. So big fan of unfollowing people who are unhealthy. If they're in a no contact category on the boundary pyramid, or maybe in cordial, because this is someone that is unsafe, you don't have to follow them on Instagram or on Facebook or on TikTok. You don't have to watch their life if it's activating for you. I love the mute feature because that person doesn't know that you have put a boundary in place digitally with them, but you do not see their information and maybe they don't see yours. And then there are times where blocking someone is the next kindest choice to you and is what feels aligned. So you do not need to announce it. Protecting your energy doesn't require public explanation. Okay, so now let's shift gears for a minute and zoom out, because boundary hacks help in the moment, but a roadmap prepares you ahead of time. So here is how to create one that supports your nervous system and self-worth. Now, when I'm teaching this to my clients, again, I don't just kind of shoo them out the door and say like, hey, cool, we just talked about boundaries. I taught you all these things, like go have them. I'm very aware that we need a structured map and plan, and that it is very individualized. So because I don't see you guys individually, it's definitely going to look different for each person, but I'm going to give you like a general format that you can plug in. And remember, I know I give this invitation a lot, but if any of this feels super activating, again, just like the social media example I gave, if it's creating more stress, more comparison, more critical inner voice, it's probably a really good place to maybe take this to a professional. So maybe you can find a therapist or coach. And what's really neat is like, this is super directed. You could bring this information into your therapist and coach and say, hey, like, I really want to work on boundaries and how to communicate them, or how to even know which boundary I need to have, or I have this relationship with my mom and I learned the structure, but I'm not really sure how to put it into place. So keep in mind that if you need support, because it's hard to do this stuff on your own, and if this podcast is not enough support, please seek out the aligned support so that you can carry this out in your life, because it is very helpful. So first, we're going to bring that boundary pyramid back into our frame of reference here. And I want you guys, the first part of the structure is to think about someone that you want to have boundaries with. I know in previous episodes, I invited you guys to make a list of people and put them into categories. So in that list, like who stands out that like, ooh, there's some things I got to do differently with this person. I'm carrying resentment or I'm avoiding them. So first pick the person, and then which boundary pyramid category are they in? Sacred, trust, shared interest, cordial, no contact. And the reason why I want you to stop and pause and consider where they go in the boundary categories, because there were some principles that I shared that helped you understand how to show up and what to expect based off where that person goes in the categories. Step 2, I want you to identify the boundaries that you would like to have with this person. And now, normally when I teach this, people will be like, I don't know what boundaries I want to have with this person. So a great place to stop and get curious is this question. What do you want to stop doing or tolerating with this person if you could? Now, remember, there's a variance of action here. It's okay to just write this out and be like, there is no way I can do this. Like, I cannot tell my mom I don't want to talk about my dating life with her. Okay, fair. But remember, the truth sets us free, right? Especially when we tell it to ourselves. So even if you are just saying, gosh, I'm actually going to tell myself the truth here. I don't want to do this anymore. I have no idea how I'm going to put it into action, but I don't want to do it anymore. That's enough. But if you're like, actually, I don't want to keep doing this and I'm ready to put it in action, also great. So what do you want to stop doing or tolerating with this person? Write it down. I want to stop telling them things about my personal life. I want them to stop commenting on my weight. Whatever it is, let's put it down as a sentence. Step 3, communication. Remember, not every boundary needs to be communicated. There are 2 types of boundaries: internal boundaries, invitational boundaries. You would be surprised how often boundaries are internal and do not require communication. But I want you to stop and think, do I need to communicate to this, or is this an invitation to myself? Right? Like that example of like, I don't want to talk on the phone past 9 p.m. Like you could, if you wanted to, call everybody you know and say, don't call me after 9 p.m. Or the invitation might be, I'm not going to answer the phone after 9 p.m. And then we don't need to communicate that boundary to anyone. That communication went to yourself. It was an invitation to yourself. And also there are times that we do need to communicate a boundary. And again, so that you're not caught off guard, because normally if we're caught off guard, we react, and we will react based off the same patterning, right? The default patterns. When we are prepared and intentional, we might have that script in our back pocket, or we might be in a conversation with someone and read it off, because it's really hard to have these conversations, and it's the next kind of choice to have it written out. So if you feel that it needs to be communicated, write it out. What would you say to that person? That way you have a script, and again, it's in your back pocket. Step 4, and one of my favorite steps on this map, is identifying what safe activities and topics you can do with this person. What does that look like? Make a list of what you can do or talk about with this person that doesn't activate you. Now, I want to give you guys some examples. I'm going to give you a few, because I know this can be confusing. And typically when I'm sharing this with clients, I'm walking them through it with them. So, example, somebody chooses my mom. Where is she in the boundary pyramid? She's in shared interest, because she tends to be a little judgy and give me a lot of unsolicited advice. So it's mom. We identified her. We identified what category of the boundary pyramid she's in. She's in shared interest. What's the boundary? I want to stop over disclosing about my relationship. Communication. I'm going to give you 2 examples. One example is an internal boundary. One is an invitational boundary. So if I say, I want to stop over disclosing about my relationship, then the internal boundary would be, I will not discuss my relationship with my mom. And if she asks, I will keep it high level. So if she says, well, what's going on with your relationship? Did he get his shit together? Whatever it is. You go, yeah, he's working on some stuff and we're doing good. That's high level. Now, if you need to communicate a boundary, it might sound something like this. Hey, mom, when I open up about my life, I'm actually not looking for feedback. I'd really just appreciate it if you could listen. So I'm asking for you to hold space, not give me feedback. Safe activities and topics. Okay. I am aware that I can go shopping, talk about the weather, go to a movie, maybe short meals together, and we can talk about shared shows that we like. Now, the reason this sounds kind of silly, because it's like, okay, yeah, I kind of know what I can talk to my mom about. This is being intentional in the conversation. Intention is a high vibrational energy. I'm going to share a story with you that I was rebuilding a relationship with someone that I had like a very activating relationship with. Like very often when we would talk, we would kind of go into these areas of conversation that would probably activate both of us, and we would end up kind of in a combative type of situation. So without boundaries, what I did was I avoided this person. And a lot of times when we avoid, our guilt increases. And so I was feeling guilty all the time, but I really didn't know how to have conversations with this person and not be super activated the whole time and not want to, avoid and not talk to this person. So I did this very thing, wrote everything out. What do I want to stop doing with this person? Do I need to communicate this? And at that time, I didn't. Really, the invitation was to myself. And I wrote out a list. And I was so specific in the list. And that's like a really strong invitation I have with you or for you with these lists, is be as specific as you can. And then revisit these lists before you talk to this person or you interact with them. This particular person that I'm talking about, we did have some shared interest, and this person was in shared interest. So I truly rebuilt my relationship with this person based off a few things that we had in common. And you can laugh if you want, because they're kind of silly. We talked about laser treatments, because I love a good laser treatment. Ghost hunting shows, because I have not discussed this on this podcast, but I fancy myself a bit of a paranormal investigator, even though I'm really scared of it, which means I'm probably not going to ever end up doing this as my fallback career. And maybe one day when we have some time to kill, I'll share an experience of when I did a paranormal investigation a couple years ago and have not done one since because it scared me. Anyways, we talked about ghost hunting shows. We talked about our children. We talked about shows that we were watching. And I know that sometimes that can feel very surface, especially if this was someone at one point we were close to. But kind of scaling back and being intentional in that relationship helped me rebuild that relationship. I have more than 5 things to discuss with this person. We're in a really, really great place. It's a shared interest relationship, but it's a much less volatile place. And I feel less activated in relationship with that person. So never underestimate that writing out these these safe activities and topics can be a lifesaver in relationships. And this is not, again, to have you distance yourself from your loved ones or the people you're in relationship with. It's actually boundaries help you be in relationship in a way that's more enjoyable. When I would get off those conversations with this person previous, I felt activated. There were so many things that came up. And after I was intentional with my interaction with this person, I would get off the call and go, wow, I just talked to them for 40 minutes and it was enjoyable. And we laughed and we talked about things. And that's a much better place to meet someone than when we're trying to force people to be different than they are or force the relationship to be different than it is. So I'm going to give you guys another example, a coworker. Category, shared interest. Of course, this is Sue from accounting, right? Boundary. I want to stop responding to emails after work hours. Now, communication. Do I need to? Again, it could be a invitation to self where you just don't respond, but sometimes in work settings, it's nice to be clear. So the communication might sound like, hey, I'm working on having a better work-life balance, so I won't be replying outside of work hours. Period. What are the safe topics, projects, lunch breaks, non-personal updates? You can keep it to the shared interest. If this is not somebody that you care for, then you can just talk to them about work stuff, and that's okay. Example number 3, maybe it's an old friend, and the category is shared interest. And you identify the boundary as I want to stop meeting up because I don't feel emotionally safe with this person. Example 3, an old friend. Where are they in your boundary categories? Shared interest. Maybe this is a friend that as you're going through this boundary work, you go, you know what? I don't feel safe with this person and I really don't enjoy the interactions we have, but I don't want to get rid of the friendship entirely. So what is the boundary? I want to stop going out to dinner with this person and investing time and energy during my free time because I don't feel emotionally safe with this person. So is there communication necessary? Again, you can go 2 ways. It could be an internal boundary where you say I'm just going to say no when they ask me to dinner. Or maybe you want to communicate the boundary and say, hey, listen, I am focusing on some other things in my life right now. I'm not going to have time to go out to dinner, but I'm happy to check in via text or over the phone sometimes. Or if this feels like someone you could bring it to, you could say something like, listen, I really enjoy our friendship. I like hanging out, but a lot of times when we go out, I don't feel like you ask a lot about me or you check in with me. It seems to be mostly about you. And if I'm going to invest time and energy in this, I'd love it to be a 2-way street. You can do that. Again, I would consider the awareness and capacity that person has because sometimes those type of conversations don't go well, but you have the agency and choice to pick any of those. Now, what are the safe activities and topics? Maybe it's we can talk about high school, people we knew in the past, that person's job, and that's it. So this is a really great place when we have very limited amount of safe activities and topics. Bringing that boundary hack of considering the amount of time you're spending or the duration of time you're spending with someone is a really great idea. If you can only talk about their job and people from high school, that's not enough to cover a 2-hour dinner. And most likely you're going to probably end up back in some ruts that you've fallen in before. So remember, if there's not a lot to discuss, we want to adjust the amount of time. But maybe it's enough to do a text check-in or a once a year conversation, something like that. So now you have some boundary hacks and tools that you can apply to your relationships. And now you have a structure of a roadmap of like, how do I actually put these boundaries into action? We need to know where they go in the boundary pyramid. We need to be clear on what boundaries we want to set, which would be getting curious as to what you want to stop doing and stop tolerating with this person. Considering, do I need to communicate this boundary? And if so, is the invitation to myself or to someone else? And what kind of boundary script could I write so I'm prepared to communicate that with somebody? What are the safe activities and topics I can do with this person? And again, I cannot stress enough that revisiting your safe activities and topics with somebody that you've set some boundaries with and getting clear on what boundaries, what limits you are putting into play into the relationship is a way to front end this and be intentional. Remember, you will not always get it right. You may still feel shaky or unsure, but if you're being honest with yourself and leading with care, you're doing it. So this is not about becoming like perfect at setting boundaries. It's about becoming more honest. And every time you hold a limit that honors your truth, you're practicing. So I'm aware that this was a lot in this episode, but I hope it felt like something clicked into place. Even if one hack or one line from this episode made you feel more clear, more grounded, or more like yourself, we're already doing the work. Boundaries are layered and sometimes they're messy, but you don't have to do it all at once. Just start with one thing that feels doable this week. Maybe it is writing out a boundary roadmap for a relationship that you know you need to have boundaries in. Maybe it's bringing one of those boundary hacks into your next interaction with somebody. Maybe it's going back and re-listening to some of the previous episodes to, understand this all a little bit more. Maybe it's calling a therapist, a coach, or digging into this work a little bit more deeply. Any of it is okay. Also, what is completely okay is just leaning into the curiosity of this. Maybe you're not at the place where you want to put this into action yet. The first stage of change is awareness. If it's just getting curious with like what you want to stop doing and tolerating with people, where people might go in the boundary pyramid, if you were to communicate it, what would you say? All of that is a step forward. So if this episode felt supportive to you, please send it to someone who's navigating the same kind of relational stuff. The entire purpose of this podcast for me is to share the light of the knowledge and experience that I've acquired over my life and being a life and relationship coach in a way that helps people. Because I'm limited to my client base, I wanted to share this information with as many people as I can. So if you feel that this might help someone or resonate with someone, it means the world to me that you would share it. And if you are interested in learning more about the boundary pyramid and getting more help and support from me, keep an eye out. I am in the process of creating a boundary pyramid course. It's coming in the near future, and I cannot wait to share it with you guys. So before I go, I'd like to leave you with a closing mantra. The more you honor your truth, the safer you become to yourself. The more you listen to your limits, the more you build self-trust. And every time you choose yourself, you are rewriting the story, not from fear, but from clarity, love, and trust. Thank you so much for showing up. I'm so excited I got to do this episode twice because now it's even more deeply ingrained in me. And just like you guys, I'm navigating this world too. I'm navigating this world with boundaries. I'm the last month or so of my life. Maybe it's coincidental that I've been, crafting these episodes and writing them and talking more about boundaries. But I think it's been an amazing reminder for me too, because I'm always honest. This work doesn't really end. We apply these tools for the rest of our life. And for sure, boundaries are something that you will practice for the rest of your time, as long as you're in a relationship and as long as you're taking breaths. So even though I teach it, I'm still working on it myself. And I'm just really grateful that I have this platform and that I get to teach it in this way, because it's reminding me of some of these tools that I teach and reminding me that I'm also a student of this work. So thanks again for coming. I'm going to do one more episode that has to do with boundaries specifically, and we're going to talk about boundaries in your nervous system. And then we're going to bring some guests on, because we've talked a lot about boundaries. I've done a lot of solo episodes, and I have some amazing guests that are coming on that are going to talk about their experience with using the boundary pyramid, applying boundaries in their life. And I'm so excited for them to share their experiences with you. So hang tight, and I'll see you next week. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here and for doing this work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me over on TikTok at Robin Breckenridge or Instagram at Coach with Robin, where I share even more insights, tools, and conversations around boundaries, self-trust, relational healing, and so much more. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and personal growth purposes only. The insights and tools I share are based on my experience as a life and relationship coach and are meant for general guidance. Each person's story is unique, and the nuances of individual experiences can't always be addressed in this format. What's shared here may not be applicable to every situation, especially those involving abuse, oppression, severe mental illness, or systematic harm. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek support from a qualified mental health professional or emergency resources. Thank you for listening and for showing up for yourself in this way. Take care, and I'll see you next time.